The more they're on social media, the less their emotional intelligence. Online connection that comes through broadcasting yourself to a public group, to an actual group of people, that's fraught. It's really important that younger children can calm themselves down without a screen, and that parents refrain from giving them a screen when they're having a tantrum. When young children aren't looking to a screen to calm themselves down, that's when they're actually more interested in the outside world, they're more curious, they're more likely to finish things that they start, they're easier for parents. And when they get to school, which is really what we've got to start thinking about, they're actually more ready to learn and more ready to be social. The first thing parents can do is just think about the zones in their house in which they have devices. So, for instance, maybe not in bedrooms, make sleep time a sanctuary for children and young people and even adults rather than a time for scrolling. Also in the living room or at dinner time, actually just not having devices anywhere in sight or on the person, because if we can recognize that they have an addictive pull, we can make really small changes in our homes. You need to have offline activities that you use to lift your mood, and you need to be happy to sort of push yourself to face tricky things. So that might be going to school when there's a day of a maths test or when there's an athletics carnival and you're not actually a good runner. It's important that you're not opting out and at home on a screen, but instead that you're at school, because even though you might not do well in the race, you'll actually learn as a teenager that it wasn't as bad as you thought it was and that some other good things might have happened. And what's so crucial is that we're not thinking that the only way we got through this is because we had a phone in our pocket or an online team ready to cheer us on every second, or that we had to listen to music before we could do anything that was tricky. It's really important that we're flexible and that we're facing these activities that scare us, that will allow us to grow. Yeah, we've got to think about young teenagers with anxiety, depression in terms of if they're in, for instance, their bedrooms, are they having dopamine cravings that lead them to reach out to their screen all the time? The fact that a young person or even an adult might no longer be able to be pleasantly bored, might stop sort of putting effort into activities that are offline that are just for themselves. Obviously, because we get those instant hits and gratification from entertainment on our phone or from connecting with other people, it becomes very easy to just block out all moments in time in which we're pleasantly bored. If your way of making friends and connecting is online and predominantly online, and if you say that you get a sense of belonging from that online community and that is important to you, and that's where your main belongingness comes from, that's actually when you're more likely to be addicted to social media. And for preteens, what we see is that the more they're on that social media, the less their emotional intelligence. So they're getting less good at actually being able to handle friendships and their own emotions rather than better. We also see that girls are more preoccupied with their appearance. They're less satisfied with their appearance. They're less satisfied with their schoolwork when they're addicted online. And so we've got to question this online collection, because it's not connection itself. Genuinely, when it's good for you, is one-to-one relationships that you have with people, and that's not being interfered with at all. So online connection that comes through broadcasting yourself to a public group, to an actual group of people, that's fraught. We know that all the social dynamics come into that type of connection, and it's very unsettling. What we see is that form of connection is not a healthy form of connection. So 58% of young people will say that the way they feel about themselves, their self-esteem, is established by how much others on social media like their posts or their comments, how many shares they get. That's how they're evaluating themselves, and that influences half of how those young people feel about themselves. that's a very flimsy form of self-esteem. So if you say that their connection is coming from that way of connecting to a public group, there's a real problem. It's really time now for the government to fund a public health campaign which highlights the addictive pull of technology and that gives clear, consistent messages to parents, to teachers, to school principals, to doctors, to allied health, to psychologists. And what that will do is it'll allow doctors and psychologists to actually ask children, teenagers, and young adults when they come forward for help for, say, anxiety or depression, to actually ask them about their digital health. So just like with depression, it is normal practice for a doctor to ask to do a suicide screen. For anxiety and depression, it really should be just standard practice for us to ask about how much a person is using digital media, and when it is awry, when it's off kilter, that should be part of the treatment plan. If we get clear, consistent messages, then coming from principals and schools and teachers, then parents can also push back on schools asking parents to buy younger and younger children devices for school use. So I think what we'll see is that the social media minimum age rule will have a much smoother run if we can have a very clear public health education come in. And I really like to see removing all mixed messages about how digital use contributes to mental health.